on that aspect of it. But that would just be reflecting local conditions.
What about the influence of the Danes in places like Wicklow and...
The Danes?
Yeah, the Danes are Norwegians.
Okay, but we're...
Settlements how did that influence Brehon? Do we have any idea?
Oh, sure. But now, what you're asking, or what we're talking about there, is the impact of foreign invasions. So the Danes were a foreign invasion, the Normans were a foreign invasion, the Celts were a foreign invasion. The Celts, so the various assaults from outside were relatively minor, and Ireland absorbed them very readily. And it really wasn't until the very modern times, like the Tudors, that they really lost out, because they absorbed the Normans very readily. They were they were only a relatively short impact, and they just completely absorbed and became, with the famous phrase, more Irish than the Irish themselves.
Names like Burke and Fitzgibbon and
that's right. They became totally assimilated, and and that's one of the things I wanted to bring up. I'm glad you reminded me. The English law, as they tried to reconquer that back, the English established English law in Dublin and around it, and tried to expand it out. And the English law was defined by the Pale. So when they refer to beyond the Pale, they're actually referring to Brehon laws, that the old Irish laws. Another thing that just occurred to me during the break too that I wanted to mention, in the if you were say in Connemara and you were listening to the Mass in Irish, when the priest would close it, he'd say Shine Brehon J. That's the word. That is the word of God. Isn't that interesting? It just occurred to me when I was thinking, because I used to go to so that it just reiterates what I said earlier, that it is the word. That is the law. Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
And what does it exactly mean, word for word?
It is.
Well, I don't know if you're Catholic, but those of you who are Catholic and go to Mass, one of the last words when when he closes the book and he kisses it and he says, that is the word of the Lord.
So say it in Irish again.
Shine Brehon J.
So it comes around full circle.
Well, it shows, as I said, a use of the Irish word Brehon and the law, as it comes out of the Now you're not going to read that in any textbook that I've ever read, but that's just my observation, and it makes sense to me because I see that's what I see in my. Most of our interpretation of what we call Irish is all coming out of the English interpretation of it. It's coming out of the Oxford scholars. We have not yet created or generated a generation of Irish scholars. We just haven't.
Well, how big of an area did one of the Brehons?
The Tua.
Just the Tua? So there must have been some differences of development within Tuas of precedence for law. So there had to be some differences.
How far a cow could
them.
wander in one day?
Only to reflect local conditions.
Yes,
but the system wouldn't have varied. Just that there would be more emphasis on one than another.
So all the any big changes was after the English
No.
came then, huh?
Well, no. The Brehon laws would not have accommodated the English system, nor even the Christian system.
Right.
It just eventually got wiped out of it, not because it collapsed, but because it didn't have the patronage. Once the chieftains were gone, it lost the patronage.
It kind of relates to that.
Yeah.
The concept of hospitality.
Oh, yes.
When inns and hotels started coming around. They also did that in Scotland.
Yes.
And so people usually were supposed to go and stay at someone's house.
Yes.
And they were treated to hospitality, but now they started having these inns pop up.
Yes.
So there was another way of breaking it down.
Yes, it was.
So it's coming from all different angles.
That's right. And even when they started to adopt the system of oaths, oath house, maybe that's where it comes from, the hosting, I don't know, but she host, that's what hostel and so on. There were laws about that. There was very, 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 very strong laws about of hospitality. whoa, one of the greatest offences were to breach the laws of hospitality and equality. One of the stories being told when the Normans came, and the Irish, were friendly with them, they, went along with them, and the chieftains came in, they sat down, and they had parties together. But one of the clashes, the cultural clashes right away, was the king came in, and he had all his people with him. So the harpist, and even the whatever, his brewer, and the English were horrified that the Irish were allowing these people to sit down at the same, and they wouldn't do it, and the Irish reluctantly said, well, as we're the hosts, and out of we'll it's not our ways, but we will accept your ways, and we'll ask our servants to leave. So, gradually those kind of things started to decline. And that has been documented in the early days. So, yeah.
Wasn't there something when hospitality could be refused in Brehon law?
I don't know. Maybe under very, very special... I don't know.
I studied urban regional planning in Ireland, and I remember reading in the laws that it's still in the books that if you need to use the facility, you can go to anybody's house and knock on the door and they have to allow you. And it's still on the books.
What did you say?
You can go to anybody's house, and if you need to use the restroom, the toilet, and you can knock on the door and ask permission, they have to give permission.
Can I go to the cow house?
It's
Wow.
But
the funny thing is, we were out walking with some friends and their kids, and the daughter had a problem, and we just walked through the door and knocked and...
Oh yeah, that's traditional. It is very deep, very, very deep. And
Bread law still exists. Like, does Breton law exist a little bit in Ireland, or does it still?
in the minds and in the spirits, they probably don't think of it as Brehon laws, but it's there, so innate. It's so genetic in them. As he just said, somebody coming to the door and asking for a glass of water. I can't think of any greater sin that anybody would commit than refusing that person a glass of water.
They just wouldn't.
And one of the early stories of the Irish when they went over to England, and when they were being charged, that an Englishman would say, well, that'll cost you a penny or whatever. It just like they couldn't imagine anything worse than that.
It's like air in the pumps. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like air here in certain gas station. They charge you with that. In Chile, we don't charge for air nor water in gas stations.
Yes.
It's free. And for eons of time.
I remember my mom.
Yes, that's good to hear.
I remember my mom telling me that her dad, he jumped boat from Ireland and he was illegal the whole time he was here. He came across in the families, he jumped boat in San Francisco and ran down to LA, and he lived in an Irish neighborhood and all that stuff, and he kept changing his name and stuff. So anyway, they came through the neighborhood one time, they were trying to keep blacks from moving in the neighborhood, this whole area, and he refused to sign papers. He said he was not gonna sign anything that said somebody who who had enough money couldn't buy a home. He just refused to do it. He would never, this attitude that he just didn't do things like that.
It was innate.
Really into him.
It really was. You didn't have to give it a name. It was part of your psyche, your culture.
What were you telling me about its resurfacing in South America somehow? Breton law, or the idea of Breton law?
Oh, yes. Yes, in modern times there has been, when resurgent indigenous peoples, particularly in South America, who are now fighting back against the old imperial systems, were casting around looking for something, because they had totally lost. They didn't have any evidence of any prior laws. They have used the Brehon laws and in the firm belief that they in fact corresponded with what the laws that they had lost. And that is apparently, yes, it does.
For example, in Chile we have a main tribe, the so-called Mapuche. See, the Mapu is a term, it's a word, there are two words really. And it's very meaningful because the Mapuche nation of Chile is really, really, really into nature as you guys, the Irish.
Yes.
You know, they worship nature, it's the great mother.
Yes.
You see, the mother is like the theory of the so-called the Gaia theory.
Yes.
New Agers, so-called. It's not a New Age, it's an old age that has been revived.
Yes.
And so this tribe in Chile that are really incredible people, and I always admire them. The word the Mapuche means Mapu is earth and Che is people. See, already